Welcome to Horror Stories Fanatics. If you enjoy this type of content, then subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss out on any of our latest and greatest uploads. The Red Summer was a period in mid-1919 during which white supremacist terrorism and racial riots occurred in more than 36 cities across the United States and in one rural county in Arkansas. The term Red Summer was coined by civil rights activist and author James Weldon Johnson, who had been employed as a field secretary for the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, since 1916. In 1919, he organized peaceful protests against the racial violence. In most instances, attacks consisted of white-on-black violence. Numerous African Americans fought back, notably in the Chicago and Washington, D.C. race riots, which resulted in 38 and 15 deaths, respectively, along with even more injuries and extensive property damage in Chicago. Still, the highest number of fatalities occurred in the rural area around Elaine, Arkansas, where an estimated 100 to 240 black people and 5 white people were killed, an event now known as the Elaine massacre. The anti-black riots developed from a variety of post-World War I social tensions, generally related to the demobilization of both black and white members of the United States Armed Forces following World War I, an economic slump, and increased competition in the job and housing markets between ethnic European Americans and African Americans. The time would also be marked by labor unrest, for which certain industrialists used black people as strikebreakers, further inflaming the resentment of white workers. The riots and killings were extensively documented by the press, which, along with the federal government, feared socialist and communist influence on the black civil rights movement of the time, following the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. They also feared foreign anarchists who had bombed the homes and businesses of prominent figures and government leaders. Background: the Great Migration. With the mobilization of troops for World War I, and with immigration from Europe cut off, the industrial cities of the American Northeast and Midwest experienced severe labor shortages. As a result, northern manufacturers recruited throughout the South, from which an exodus of workers ensued. And by 1919, an estimated 500,000 African Americans had emigrated from the southern United States to the industrial cities of the Northeast and Midwest in the first wave of the Great Migration, which continued until 1940. African American workers filled new positions in expanding industries such as the railroads, as well as many existing jobs formerly held by whites in some cities. They were hired as strikebreakers, especially during the strikes of 1917. This increased resentment against blacks among many working-class whites, immigrants, and first-generation Americans. Washington and Norfolk, July 19th to the 23rd. Beginning on July 19th, Washington, D.C. had 4 days of mob violence against black individuals and businesses perpetrated by white men, many of them in the military and in uniforms of all 3 services, in response to the rumored arrest of a black man for the rape of a white woman. The men rioted, randomly beat black people on the street, and pulled others off streetcars to attack them. When the police refused to intervene, the black population fought back. The city closed saloons and theaters to discourage assemblies. Meanwhile, the 4 white-owned local papers, including the Washington Post, ginned up weeks of hysteria, fanning the violence with incendiary headlines, calling in at least one instance for a mobilization of a cleanup operation. After 4 days of police inaction, President Woodrow Wilson mobilized the National Guard to restore order. When the violence ended, a total of 15 people had died, 10 white people, including 2 police officers, and 5 black people. 50 people were seriously wounded, and another 100 less severely wounded. It is one of the few times in the 20th century white-on-black riots that white fatalities outnumbered those of black people. The NAACP sent a telegram of protest to President Woodrow Wilson, and it read as follows: "The shame put upon the country by the mobs, including United States soldiers, sailors, and Marines, which have assaulted innocent and unoffending Negroes in the national capital. Men in uniform have attacked Negroes on the streets and pulled them from streetcars to beat them. Crowds are reported to have directed attacks against any passing Negro. The effect of such riots in the national capital upon race antagonism will be to increase bitterness and danger of outbreaks elsewhere. The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People calls upon you as President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the nation to make a statement condemning mob violence and to enforce such military law as situation demands." On July 21st in Norfolk, Virginia, a white mob attacked a homecoming celebration for African-American veterans of World War I. At least 6 people were shot, and the local police called in Marines and Navy personnel to restore order. The Chicago riots, July 27th through August 12th. Beginning on July 27th, the Chicago race riot marked the greatest massacre of Red Summer. Chicago's beaches along Lake Michigan were segregated by custom when Eugene Williams, a black youth, swam into an area on the south side customarily used by whites. He was stoned and drowned. Chicago police refused to take action against the attackers. Thus, young black men responded with violence, lasting for 13 days, with the white mobs led by the ethnic Irish. White mobs destroyed hundreds of mostly black homes and businesses on the south side of Chicago. The state of Illinois called in a militia force of 7 regiments, several thousand men to restore order. The riots resulted in casualties that included 38 fatalities, 23 blacks and 15 whites, 527 injured, and 1,000 black families left homeless. Other accounts reported 50 people were killed, with unofficial numbers and rumors reporting even more. Mid to late August. On August 12th, at its annual convention, the Northeastern Federation of Colored Women's Clubs, or the NFCWC, denounced the rioting and burning of black Americans' homes, asking President Wilson to use every means within your power to stop the rioting in Chicago and the propaganda used to incite such. At the end of August, the NAACP protested again to the White House, noting the attack on the organization's secretary in Austin, Texas, the previous week. Their telegram read, "The National Association for the Advancement of Colored People respectfully inquires how long the federal government under your administration intends to tolerate anarchy in the United States." August 30th and 31st, the Knoxville riot in Tennessee started after the arrest of a black suspect on suspicion of murdering a white woman. Searching for the prisoner, a lynch mob stormed the county jail, where they liberated 16 white prisoners, including suspected murderers. The mob attacked the African American Business District, where they fought against the district's black business owners, leaving at least 7 dead and more than 20 wounded. Omaha, September 28th to 29th. From September 28th to the 29th, the race riot of Omaha, Nebraska, erupted after a mob of over 10,000 ethnic whites from South Omaha attacked and burned the county courthouse to force the release of a black prisoner accused of raping a white woman. The mob lynched the suspect, Will Brown, hanging him and burning his body. The group then spread out, attacking black neighborhoods and stores on the north side, destroying property valued at more than $1 million. Once the mayor and governor appealed for help, the federal government sent U.S. Army troops from nearby forts, who were commanded by Major General Leonard Wood, a friend of Theodore Roosevelt and a leading candidate for the Republican nomination for president in 1920. And with that, we've reached the end of this video, all about when the purge happened in America, legalized murder. If you enjoyed it and you found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content just like this.